Okay, welcome to this lecture on stress and exercise. I am Kristen Dupuy. I am Category 2 faculty in the Human Performance and Sport Department, and the lead of our exercise is medicine on campus program. And I wanted to start off this lecture with a fun quote, "Why am I so soft in the middle when the rest of my life is so hard?" By You Can Call Me Al. The song by Paul Simon. The song popped into my head as I was beginning to write this lecture, and I think this is something that um, a lot of us can relate to. Soft in the middle when our lives are so hard. So we're going to start off with the definition of stress. What is stress? And stress is the combination of a stressor, stress reactivity, and strain. So stress is, for lack of better terms, is something that's going to cause a stress reaction. And a stress reaction can vary from person to person, but we tend to see an increase in blood pressure, an increase in heart rate, an increase in stress hormones like cortisol. Strain is the psychological, and physiological and behavioral outcomes of stress reactivity. So when our body has stress, our stress reactivity is shown in a lot of different ways. It's shown in our behavior. We can see physiological changes in our bodies, and we can see changes in our thoughts. I'm going to be jumping from side to side today. I thought of, trying this different presentation style, and we'll see how it turns out. Stress, it's important to note, can take on a lot of different forms. When we're talking about stress, we're not just talking about the bad things that happen in our lives. Stress can be big changes and can be good things like big changes that just cause a disruption to our system. So things like getting a new job or having a child or moving to a new city, even though those can be positive changes, they can also cause stress in our lives. So we do have terms for the good stress and the bad stress. The term eustress refers to those good stressors, so good things in our lives, but things that still throw off our homeostasis or our balance. And distress are the bad things that occur. As I previously mentioned, stress has lots of different effects on the body. It affects our physical state, it affects our mood, it affects our behavior. So if you are having a long day and you're feeling stressed, you might stop and realize that you're feeling lots of different symptoms like headaches. You might have some muscle tension, which can lead to pain. You can even have chest pain, fatigue, change in sex drive, upset stomach, especially for those with irritable bowel syndrome. And you might be fatigued and exhausted and you can't sleep. So lots of bad feelings going on in the body. Of course, you feel stressed in the form of anxiety, you feel restless. A lot of times when we're stressed, it's hard to stay focused. It can be hard to find motivation to take on those things that are bringing on stress. Feeling overwhelmed. When we're stressed, we're often irritable or angry, in a bad mood. We can also feel sadness and depression. And between the effects of our body and the effects of what we're feeling in our mind, a lot of times this is going to manifest itself in our behaviors. So overeating is a common symptom of stress. So is undereating, depending on the person. Excuse me, angry outbursts due to that feeling overwhelmed, feeling irritable. Drug or alcohol misuse and abuse often happens when people are stressed. Tobacco use is also a common behavior that people turn to when they're stressed. Social withdrawal, and then sedentary lifestyle. People are less likely to exercise when they are stressed out, which is unfortunate because what we have found from the research is that exercise is one of the very best things that you can do when to manage your stress and your overall mental health. So stress is a big concern in health, and it's a big concern because so many different people experience it, and it comes with some serious side effects. So because of all the different hormones, neurotransmitters being released, physiological responses like increased blood pressure and increased heart rate, we do see some long-term health risks or consequences of stress. Obesity can come from long-term inflammation, but it can also come from our stress behaviors like overeating and not exercising. It can exacerbate health conditions like COPD, asthma, and migraines. So people who have chronic asthma or have asthma can have an acute asthmatic attack due to stress. Hypertension, that's an increase in blood pressure. Due to, again, those stress hormones, the hypertension, increase in heart rate, so increased demands on the heart, we can see things like heart attack and stroke. We also see things like coronary artery disease, which leads to heart attack and stroke. Chronic stress can impair our immune system, which makes us susceptible to diseases, which makes us more stressed out. Because stress does play a role on our endocrine system, it can impact our body's ability to respond to insulin. So we do see a correlation between chronic stress and diabetes. And then we also see decreased fertility. So lots of health conditions that we're concerned about, and a wide variety of health conditions that we're concerned about. People who experience chronic stress are going to experience it in a lot of different aspects of their life and in lots of different aspects of their health. And again, that's one reason why we're so concerned. So what's important about stress is because it's important to realize that stress is inevitable. Life is going to be constantly challenging. Life is going to be changing, and that's going to bring on both eustress and distress. But it's important to have different ways to manage that stress. And there's lots of different ways. When it comes to dealing with stress, I usually tell people to try lots of different things and stick with whatever makes you feel good, whatever you feel is effective. So that could be journaling, meditation, especially mindful meditation. Meditation paired with yoga is awesome. Therapy is very recommended for people dealing with stress. In therapy, they often talk about some of these different techniques to manage stress. Breathing exercises, there's a ton of different types of breathing techniques out there that are made to calm your body down and stop the stress response physiologically. Listening to music, anything that makes you feel good. I do want to mention that we do have a course within the Human Performance and Sport department that talks about stress management techniques. It is an awesome class that is not just applicable to those in sports management and exercise science. It's applicable to everybody. So that's our HPS 1440 stress management techniques. A class where we examine stress and how we deal with stress and try out lots of different techniques. Taught by yours truly. So exercise and stress. So we talked in the previous slide about all these different awesome ways that you can manage your stress. But one of the very best ways to manage your stress that I previously mentioned is exercise. And research has shown that exercise helps the body deal with stress in a lot of different ways. Stress elicits the fight or flight response. And the fight or flight theory is based on that for early humans, stressors were things that we had to deal with in one of two ways. We either had to fight the stressor or we had to run from the stressor. So I always think of a lion in, the savannah. You're walking, through a field, you see a lion. You have two options. You can either fight the lion or you run from the lion. And whether or not you fight the lion or run from the lion, your body prepares to be able to do so because that's a big task. That's a big order. So that's our physiologic reactivity to stress. With the fight or flight response, we see lots of different things. We see increased blood pressure, increased heart rate. We see increased stress hormones, including catecholamines and cortisol. And while these things are great for the short term, if we were to fight a lion or run from a lion, in today's society where stress is often a chronic issue or, an abstract issue that we're not dealing with physically, it becomes problematic. So what we have found from our research is that exercise helps us deal with the fight or flight response. Physically fit people demonstrated smaller physiological reactions to stress. In other words, when they hit that fight or flight response, they saw smaller changes. So smaller increases in heart rate, smaller increases in blood pressure, smaller increases in total peripheral resistance, which basically means that we see the heart not working as hard. So the good news is if you are not physically fit now, regular exercise helps change the body to be able to adapt to stress. And we see those same adaptations in people who begin training as those who are already physically fit. So again, decreases in blood pressure, decreases in heart rate, decreases in stress levels. And there's a few different ideas around this exercising in fight or flight response. One is that one of the issues with today's society is that because when we encounter stressors now, we're sedentary and we're not using up all these physiological responses that our body is using, it leads to these long-term health problems. So our body's ready to do something. And because most of our stressors don't require a physical response, our bodies are left thinking, what do I do now? Exercise allows the body to use up the energy, neurotransmitters, hormones, all that stuff that has been brought out to deal with the stressor. So it allows our body to act in a more natural way. We're allowed to, metaphorically run from the lion or fight the lion. The other thing that exercise does is exercise regularly introduces our body to stress, acute stress. So not chronic stress, but acute stress. And by regularly exposing our bodies to acute stress, the body gets better at responding to fight or flight, which allows our bodies to return to homeostasis a lot more quickly when we are in a stressed situation. So we are going to talk about some physiological responses to exercise. This is kind of an interesting area because there's a lot of unknowns. Stress is different to different people. Stress impacts our bodies and our minds in so many different ways that it's hard to narrow down exactly, the key things that are going on. So we're going to talk about a couple different theories. And we're going to first start with the endorphin hypothesis. And this is the one that people tend to be familiar with. I liked the quote from Legally Blonde, if you've seen it. Exercise gives you endorphins. Endorphins make you happy. Happy people just don't shoot their husbands. They just don't. And the idea is that endorphins are our feel-good neurotransmitters that help with chronic stress. When our body's in distress, endorphins can be released and we feel better. The endorphins are often known for causing what's known as the runner's high that our running enthusiasts speak of. And research does support this. Research has shown that there are increased serum levels. So we see increased levels of endorphins in the blood when people are exercising at a moderate to vigorous intensity. How that directly impacts the brain, we're still trying to figure out the exact mechanisms of that. But what we know is that exercise releases endorphins. Endorphins make us happy. So another hypothesis is the thermogenic hypothesis. And as I was preparing for this presentation, I found it really interesting. The thermogenic hypothesis is that an increase in body temperature due to exercise improves mood and reduces feelings of stress. And what I thought was really interesting was this hypothesis showed up in almost all of the literature I was reading. But nobody had any good research to back it up. So it's an idea. It has not been well backed by research so far. So we just take it as an idea and keep moving with it. Another hypothesis regarding the physiological response to exercise is the mitochondrial hypothesis. One of the physiological responses to exercise is an increase in the number of mitochondria in the muscles and the brain. And we know the mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell. That's one thing we remember from biology, that's it. But what's also important to know about the mitochondria is that it plays an essential part of brain plasticity. If this is not working the way I want it to. It helps in brain plasticity. We used to believe that by the time we were about 25, our brain was fully developed and we really couldn't change the neural pathways that were in our brain. And what we have found out is that our brains are much more flexible than we thought. And we refer to that as brain plasticity. So throughout our lives, we can create new neural pathways. And what they have found is mitochondria help with this brain plasticity. Brain plasticity is linked to decreased risk of feeling depressed and stressed. Other important physiological events that happen in the body are regulation of other neurotransmitters. Serotonin, dopamine, and noradrenaline are all neurotransmitters that we see are imbalanced in people with anxiety and depression, so people that experience stress regularly. Exercise has been found to regulate these neurotransmitters, much like SSRIs. And SSRIs are selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors. They are commonly prescribed antidepressants. So what some research suggests is that for some people, exercise has a similar, if not same effect to an SSRI. It can reduce some of those feelings of stress and anxiety caused by anxiety and depression. The endocannabinoid system, another endocrine-based system in the brain, endocannabinoid levels were also found to be high after prolonged exercise. This was a study done in mice, and what they concluded from that were these high endocannabinoid levels caused by exercise were linked to decreased anxiety and feelings of pain, so things that we feel when we're stressed. Cortisol I've mentioned earlier in this talk, and cortisol is a stress hormone. Long-term high cortisol levels have lots of damage to our body, perform lots of damage on our body. So we like to manage our cortisol levels. And what we found is that habitual exercise is a way to keep our cortisol levels lower. Habitual exercise, so regular exercise, decreases the amount of stress hormones released from the HPA axis, which is just an area of the brain responsible for releasing those hormones. Exercise increases brain-derived neurotrophic factor, mRNA, which can help regulate our behavior. So with regulation of a behavior, we're less likely to have the negative behavioral responses that are associated with stress. So lots and lots of physiological adaptations. So you can see kind of where it gets a little bit confusing of exactly why is exercise so good for stress. We know it's good for stress, but to pinpoint down one exact reason, we cannot do it because there's a lot of different important stuff happening in the body. We also see psychological responses to exercise. One is it just might distract you from what you're feeling, especially a physical activity that requires mental stimulation like rock wall climbing, where you're trying to figure out your path, dancing, stuff that you really need to focus on is going to distract you from the things that you're stressed out about, and that can help you manage your stress. Exercise can help increase feelings of self-efficacy. Self-efficacy is the belief that you can do something. And people with high feelings of self-efficacy tend to deal with stress better because they feel that they can take actions that are going to help improve their situation and reduce their stress. Physical activity can provide enjoyment, and if we do things that we like, we are less likely to feel stressed. We spend time doing things we enjoy. Exercise can provide opportunities to create communities. I know one thing that a lot of CrossFit people have always said is that they love the community that CrossFit brings, and humans are social by nature. So having a community can be something that's very beneficial for mental health, or exercising alone can get you some much needed alone time. There are extroverts and introverts in this world, and it can either help provide you an opportunity for community or get you some alone time to decompress. What's important to note is the type of exercise is important, because the type of exercise is going to elicit different psychological responses in different types of people. So if somebody is not physically fit, so they have not been exercising regularly, high intensity exercise is not going to reduce stress. High intensity exercise is actually going to stress the person out, because it's going to be uncomfortable. It's not going to feel good. People are going to feel, intimidated or embarrassed. So we want exercise to be within the limits of what we can do. It's important to avoid exercise for stress management that is too competitive. In people that are highly competitive, stress can be increased through exercise when they are in a competitive environment and the activity doesn't go their way. So it is important for it to be within your limits and something that you enjoy, something that is not going to bring on more stress. So what kind of exercise should you specifically, be doing? When it comes to the research, aerobic or cardio exercise is the best researched, but research has shown that all types of exercise can be beneficial. When it really comes down to it, it should be something that you enjoy. Because doing something that you enjoy reduces stress. It's a good distraction. And then also it's going to increase adherence to the exercise program. When we talked about some of those physiological responses to exercise, the important thing to note about those is that the physical activity had to be habitual. So it's not like you can exercise once and have benefits for life. It's regular exercise that is going to continue to manage the stress. It is a process. It is a lifestyle. It's not a one-time thing. So to increase adherence, find something that you enjoy. You're much more likely to stick to something that you like, especially when you're stressed, and less likely to exercise than sticking to whatever you think is the most or the best exercise. And then try exercising in nature, and that's going to be my next slide, is the power of the nature walk. There has been a lot of research on exercising outside, and what they have concluded is that nature walks have found to be especially beneficial for mental health and wellness. Being outside or being close to the outdoors, even seeing, the sun from your window, plants, wildlife, flying by from your window, has seen increased cognitive development, improved working memory, and increased cognitive flexibility. Remember that neuroplasticity, cognitive flexibility reduces symptoms of stress and depression. There's a lot of theories relating to why being outdoors makes stress levels lower. We know that it does, but much like our physiological responses to exercise, we're not sure exactly what it is. We have a few different theories. One is that humans have an innate drive to be outside, that our natural state is to be outside. And so when we're outside, we're in our natural state. We feel more in balance, in homeostasis. There are some ideas that it triggers physiological responses that reduce stress and replenishes cognitive sources. Even small amounts of being outside can be beneficial. So you don't have to go outside for hours at a time. You can take a 10-minute walk and it can be beneficial for your mental health. Well, research has shown that truly being immersed in nature, so being in the true wild, maybe going for a hike in the mountains, is the most beneficial. Any sort of nature can help. So we have a beautiful campus with lots of sunshine and some grassy areas and trees and birds and squirrels, and even that can be beneficial. So what we've really found between the benefits of being outside and reducing our stress and the benefits of exercise We found that doubling up on those and doing something as simple as walking outside during your day can be a really powerful tool in managing stress. And I really encourage you to try to do those during these high levels of stress, like the end of the semester. Take that break for yourself, go outside, take that 10-minute walk, because when you come back, you're going to feel less stressed. You're going to be able to be better focused and more productive. So taking a little bit of time for yourself, doing something simple like walking outside can really save you time in keeping you focused, productive, and from feeling quite so overwhelmed. So what is really the take home from this is stress is common. We know that. We've all experienced stress at some point in our lives. We are concerned about stress because of the number of people experiencing chronic stress and the negative impact that chronic stress has on our physiological, psychological, and social areas of our lives. It really impacts everything. Exercise helps manage stress through a lot of different ways, including the physiological level and the psychological level. When it comes to what exercise is best, it should be something that you can enjoy, something that you can do regularly, because adherence is key. When possible, and if you enjoy it, exercise outside, because we have found that the power of being outside and the power of exercise work really well together in reducing stress. And then make sure to stay tuned for more information from Exercise Medicine on Campus. We're taking a brief break over the summer, but we will be back in the fall with lots more information, more webinars like these, more physical activities so you can try different things to see what you enjoy, and more screenings. So we look forward to seeing you at future events. Thank you very much for listening to my presentation. Please feel free to reach out to me with any questions. Thank you for watching.